Okay, so everyone, I'm so excited to be here today with you to talk about privacy. Now, I appreciate we're a global audience, and my very first startup here is about the Americans in the U.S. I just couldn't help myself, but the reality is really globally, it is about building trust, and that's what privacy is all about. It's about connecting with our audience and helping to explain what type of data is being collected, how it's being used, where it's being stored, how it's being shared, and what choices someone might have. And we have nearly 70% of people, 72% of Americans are reluctant to share personal data with businesses. But then a favorite stat is we have around the same percent who would spend less money if they don't trust the organization. And I think that this is incredibly important to really set the stage about where we are. Now, you might not go shopping like I do and grab screenshots of different cookie banner experiences and privacy notices. I just can't help myself. It's what I do all day long, and I'm always looking for different experiences. And there are many times where those experiences make me not want to trust the organization. And even at that first experience, I will leave the site and bring my business somewhere else. Every time you've ever chosen to buy something and you haven't given your specific credit card information to a site, and instead chose some other type of wallet, like a PayPal, an Amazon, an Apple Pay, any of the others that exist, it's because you don't trust the site with your credit card. You'd prefer to trust an intermediary and have less places with your credit card. The same is true with the data online. Individuals are wary of how much data they're giving to people, and they only want to give it to companies that they trust. We're going to talk a lot about myths and getting started and cookies and privacy notices. So it's going to be a unique journey through how to essentially build a roadmap, starting with a privacy policy. And we're going to talk about the work that you're doing all day long and where that fits in a privacy policy. But think of that privacy policy as the outward-facing communication roadmap with all of your customers and prospects. Now, one of the common myths, let's just get them out of the way right now, is that your organization is too small. So globally, many of the privacy laws, like GDPR in the EU and the UK, and a variety of the other laws that really mirror off of GDPR, have no minimum threshold. I could be a solo blogger in a beautiful Caribbean island. I have a blog, I'm selling something to Jodi in France, and congratulations, I am in scope for GDPR. Now, in the United States, we tend to have some floors where maybe it's revenue-based, not all of them. In fact, only a handful of states have that very minimum criteria, or it's the volume of customer data points, customer records you have. And website visitors, each unique website visitor essentially counts for those. The reality, though, is our customers and prospects don't know privacy laws and rules, and they don't know that there are technically some thresholds potentially in some parts of the world, like the United States. They see site A having something, they think site B should too. They don't know the difference. Anytime you might go to a health or a financial institution, you typically expect the same level of privacy protection on your information, whether they're a large institution or a really small one. Now, the other one is that all websites need a cookie banner. It might be that all websites should have a cookie banner, but it actually is not required everywhere in the United States. All marketing is not opt-in. So especially in the United States, all marketing is not opt-in. Now, globally, we have many situations where it is opt-in. Another common myth is that no one cares about privacy. Everyone just wants convenience. They want all this information. Of course, they're going to expect that we track data because it's the internet and it's free. Actually, people do care about privacy. It's why I started with statistics that show 70+% of people actually really care. And the more that companies mishandle data, the more that they realize what's actually happening, and then they begin to care even more. One of my favorites is that all data is in the cloud and you're fine. I was talking with someone last night about an e-commerce shop, and they said, well, everything's in Shopify. It's fine. And I said, no, actually, Shopify is only responsible for Shopify, but the actual e-commerce site is responsible for everything it collects, how it uses all that data, how it shares it, who has access to it, what type of marketing it provides, how it communicates, and what kind of notice. The actual company is responsible for everything. Shopify is just housing it. It's just the technical platform. This is true. Pick any other platform. And if you have data in the cloud, that is not done. That is where you've stored your data. It's really no different than if you stored your data in a physical filing cabinet. It's just a different filing cabinet, a digital one, in a digital cloud somewhere in the universe. There are still many, many parts to the privacy piece that we're going to have to cover. Now, with that being said, data privacy is everyone's responsibility. Sometimes people think, oh, that privacy thing, that's that legal person's job, or the compliance team has that covered. Or Susie in this department, she's responsible for all things privacy. I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to encourage and push you to say, actually, no, you do. Because every single person in the organization is likely processing data in some capacity. Now, we're going to talk about an analytics, a website presence, so much more a consumer side for the most part. I have seen Google Analytics on career pages. I have seen, retargeting on career pages. So employees and applicants count in many of the jurisdictions around the world. You might be processing employee data or applicant data. If you are in a marketing role and you have anything to do with an IP address or an email address, that's really all you need to have to deal with privacy. So data privacy is everyone's responsibility. Now, there's a lot in data privacy, and I only have a little bit of time. So we are not going to be able to cover everything. What I wanted to do here is give you an overview, an understanding of the slice that we are going to talk about and how it fits in the general overall landscape of privacy. If you start up at the top at established governance, someone is ultimately responsible for data privacy in your organization. However, everyone has a role, as I just shared. There are internal and external privacy policies. If anyone here has ever been in an Uber, they just updated theirs last week. You likely received an email. Data inventory, this is cataloging all the data that you have in the organization. Perhaps the team has come and asked you, help me understand the kind of data that you have in your business processes. A privacy impact assessment, this is a deeper dive, identifying all the privacy risks around how data might be processed at a particular level. This is actually required for all retargeting in almost every privacy jurisdiction. Individual rights, anyone ever opt out, not accept cookies, ask for data to be deleted? That's a more advanced individual right, but those are individual rights, and there's a long list of them. Vendor management, you're responsible. The organization is responsible for knowing who the data is going to and what they are doing with it. We're going to spend most of our time on the marketing and strategy side, a little bit on privacy notices as well. Security is an entirely different ballgame. That is how data is protected. That is a very important point. We're going to focus a lot more on the collection, use, disclosure, and choices, though. Don't forget to train people. Everyone needs to know about privacy. Thank you for showing up today to learn all about it. Everyone else in your organization needs to as well, and how it relates to their specific role. And once you get everything all done, I like to be able to maintain it. Anytime you've created a new process, you're so hopefully excited that you've created it. Now you want to remember how to make sure we maintain all the good work. The same is true in privacy. We have to maintain it. And privacy laws are on a fun hockey stick effect, meaning we are having a lot more privacy laws get passed. It's going to be really important to establish some process and procedures. So one of the things that I wanted to share was a little bit about individual rights, because a lot of what we're going to be talking about is going to be covering this idea of individual rights. Because if I go and I see a cookie banner and I have the ability to accept or reject, that's actually an individual right. And one of the things you're going to want to think about is, how do I make that request? How will the company receive it? How will the company honor it? Who is going to communicate and how will all that happen? And then there's a long list of different individual rights. Access, opt out, delete are some examples, but let's just take the basic cookie banner. That's an opt out. I opt in, I opt out. Different rules, different places, and we're going to dive into that really soon. And then we have training. You're going to see training a lot because this should not be just one person. Everyone here hopefully is going to take a wonderful vacation, and we're going to want to make sure that everyone is able to fulfill the role while you might be out, or if people change roles in the organization. Now, some other things that I want you to think about as we kind of go through here is think about before you launch any type of marketing campaign, or maybe you're part of a new product or service as well, and you're measuring those types of activities, it's important to understand the type of data being collected. Anytime you probably are starting something, someone asks, how much does it cost? Who are the people? What's the technology? Is there a legal requirement? Well, for us, we're going to have a list of privacy questions. What kind of data is being collected? Is it considered sensitive data? If you have precise geolocation, that is considered sensitive data. Do you have to collect this data? Where will this data be stored? What will my customer or prospect think? What will they question why this is being collected, or maybe not? Have I covered it in my privacy notice? Which are the privacy laws that are in scope for me? And as a result, is there anything extra special? Now, none of you need to be privacy experts. We just want you to kind of think, imagine like little antennas on your head, to think about these questions so that you can identify the right people in your organization. Now, you might wonder, is privacy here to stay? Yes, it is. And unfortunately, I just realized this slide was supposed to go at the back, but now you're going to have it at the front because Jodi has realized, oopsies. Well, privacy is here to stay because there are more laws coming globally and in the US. It is very important that you tell the person what is happening with their data. You give them choices. You only collect what is needed and have a business purpose for it and protect the data. You're going to see these themes as we start diving in. How do you future-proof? Know your data. Review the privacy notice. Good security is always important. And this is just one little example. There's many, many other security provisions. And think about the customer first. So with that being said, we're going to go into a little bit of a privacy 101. I said we're on a big hockey stick of a lot of privacy laws. Everything in green is passed and signed. Not all effective yet, but coming. We have 5 effective at the end of the year. And we have 7 more that were passed and signed. 4 to 5 are coming in next year. Now, Washington State is a really big one here. Anyone who is dealing with health data in Washington State, there are some really particular provisions that you are going to need to contend with. And it is essentially moving to an opt-in environment for that type of data. So anyone listening who has health data, and health is broad, you don't have to be a hospital or a doctor's office. It's really broad. You're going to want to do a little bit more research or find me after this presentation. A little bit of just kind of the trends. Thank you, GDPR. You helped start it for us, May 25th, 2018. California was the beginning of our privacy train in the United States, and then we've kind of gone crazy. Globally, there are other places that have mirrored GDPR. There's one in Brazil. China is a bit mirrored after GDPR, and there are a number of other countries. So depending on where you are, oftentimes privacy people tend to kind of use GDPR and the California law as the anchors, and the others follow. And actually, anyone here who has people in Quebec, you're going to want to also pay special attention. The Quebec law mirrors GDPR and has some very new special provisions coming right now and over the next year. Here's just another visual. It's kind of fun. Okay. You all are welcome to these slides. You are not meant to memorize these. I just want you to appreciate that here in the States, it's all complicated. You have to line it all up and figure out where the thresholds might be and where you might be in scope. So we're not going to go in crazy detail here, but I just wanted you to appreciate the complexity of it. So let's dive in. I mentioned at the very beginning that all marketing is not opt-in, and you don't always need a cookie banner. So cookie requirements are not created equal. Users need to opt in to cookies in the EU and the UK. In the United States, you do not need to opt in. My exception about this is soon going to be Washington, but it isn't effective yet. So my statement still holds true as of now. Washington state health data in the advertising and potentially analytics space is very well moving to opt-in consent. But we're not going to go too crazy. So let's talk about cookies. Because not all cookies are created equal. You're all very familiar, I am sure, with the different types of cookies, but this really matters because it's strictly necessary cookies that are the ones that are pretty much allowed. You can have those without needing consent. It's the rest of the cookies that are the challenge. And this is where you have to look by jurisdiction where your customers are or prospects, and it might be opt-in or it might be opt-out. And this is where you have to really understand and categorize all the different cookies that you have. Now, what is also really fun and interesting, GDPR does not do this, but in the United States, we cover this concept called sale of data. And very short version or long version short, a sale of data can essentially include ad tech. So those analytics cookies are essentially considered a sale of data. And as a result, you have to do a whole long list of things. Now, you can see that California kind of led the party here, but we have a couple other states that are following. Some are really focused on monetary only, meaning I literally gave you money and that is a sale. Other states are, no, not really as much. And so short version, the analytics and potentially advertising cookies are considered a sale. So what does that mean? Well, you need to understand all the different cookies that you have and exactly what you're using. So you need to go through that tag manager and really understand what you have. What likely is required is a link on the footer of your homepage that says opt out of sale. Your privacy notice can't say we don't sell data. Your privacy notice needs to actually say, well, we don't sell data, but there's this really interesting law. It defines data this way or sale this way. And here's what we do. And you can opt out here. In case you were wondering, is this real? Sephora got in trouble for this. Sephora had third-party analytics cookies on the site. It did not disclose that they were a sale of data. And as a result, they received a really hearty fine and wonderful PR. These are actual headlines that I grabbed about Sephora. In terms of opt-in and opt-out, again, this is kind of complicated. We got to look by state, for example. For the most part, EU and UK and other places tends to be an opt-out place. Here in the States, we have all these special links we want all over the place. Otherwise, it's often in a privacy notice. Here, it's privacy notice plus. It's like we really want to make sure that it's really clear. So I have no idea what happened to my strange formatting. Let me tell you, this is what I shared before, where you need to have an opt-in link for some sensitive type of data. And you need to have a link on the footer of the page. So go to your favorite large website. You will likely see, do not sell or share my personal information, or a little icon that says your privacy choices. The other thing that's really important is global privacy control. This is at the browser setting. It's kind of the modern version of do not track. The US laws are now requiring companies to turn this on. So you're going to need to turn GPC on and make sure that everything is working properly. How does that impact all the tags that you have? If I have that flagged on, that's going to affect your analytics. It's going to affect your overall reporting. And this is the movement here in the United States. Now, how do you handle all of this? So many of you might have some cookie consent managers. Personally, it was National Cookie Day the other day. You should know, basic chocolate chip cookie is my favorite kind of cookie. But sometimes we need some fancier kind of cookies and enter the cookie consent banner. So here, all cookie banner, cookie consent software solutions are not considered equal. And there is a lot of nuance that you want to be thinking about in all these different kinds of cookie banners. First is you need to have a banner that describes what you're actually doing. What are the kinds of cookies you have in Pixels? Do you have analytics? Do you have advertising? Do you have social media? Do you have session replay? Here in the United States, session replay, like Full Story, Hotjar, Lucky Orange, there's a long list of them, raises all kinds of Pixel litigation lawsuits. And many advisors are saying list that you have session replay cookies and make those be opt-in. Here, a consent banner might be a really great solution for you. You want to have a link that says, I can change my cookie settings. Another piece, you want something that can list the privacy policy or list all the cookies. You want symmetrical options, accept with reject, not just accept, not just okay, not just close the box. You need symmetrical, accept and reject. The UK data regulator just emphasized this the other day. You need accept and reject. Now, some people are starting to say reject optional, because remember, our strictly necessary cookies, those are allowed. So I can't actually reject all, which is really particular, but something that we're also seeing. And then depending on the software that you use, keep in mind that some of those are going to have some special nuanced configurations with Global Tag Manager, or not Google. Too early over here. Google Tag Manager. So you're going to want to make sure that you understand which cookies and pixels you have in the manager and how your software solution is going to work so that they're all actually functioning properly. And keep in mind that global privacy control, that GPC signal, also has to get tied into this. And many of the solutions are allowing you to do that for you. This is just an example cookie banner that you see on the page, but just to give you an idea that it doesn't just say, hi, we use cookies, thanks. It's going to explain the kinds of ways we're actually using cookies. So if you leave here and you remember anything, don't have a cookie banner that says we use cookies and that's it. And just accept, especially if you have people globally from the EU and the UK, you need accept and reject. If you put a cookie banner out for California, you also need accept and reject. That is the growing trend going forward. Dark patterns are another really big one. We've all seen dark patterns in a variety of ways. They're designed to trick me. We don't want to be tricked. We don't want big font. We don't want the eye to be led to what's best for the company. We have to think about the customer first. So review your user interfaces and make sure that it doesn't happen that way. You want to make sure that you're thinking about all different kinds of people when you're looking and doing some market research on your experience, because everyone's going to look at things a little bit different. A very good initial place to go is to just make sure that you're not, your fonts are the same, your colors are the same. Accept and reject is really pretty equal. I highly encourage a cookie audit. You might get everything all up and it's working amazing. Maybe that's you today. However, things are dynamic and they change. New cookies are added, new cookies are taken off, new pages are added. Things change. You want to review the cookie banner language, the consent settings, the categorization of your cookies, the actual implementation, and make sure it's working. Do you have opt-in and it's not actually doing it? If cookies are firing before I hit opt-in, that doesn't work in the UK and the EU and many other places. Do a cookie audit. We love doing these for organizations because we unfortunately always find that, oh my gosh, you're right, that cookie from 2 years ago is completely messing up our cookie banner over here. Or gosh, there's 10 new cookies that aren't being captured properly, or they're all miscategorized. They all are strictly necessary, but actually they're analytics and advertising cookies. This is an essential piece. How often it should be is based on how often you're changing your different cookies and pixels. So let's talk real briefly about a privacy notice. Privacy notices tell people what is collected, used, stored, and shared. I encourage you this holiday season as you're going shopping and finding all kinds of cool new sites, go check out some privacy notices and you're going to see the differences in them. And right away, you're probably going to decide, gosh, I trust this company, or oh my goodness, no, I don't, because they've told me nothing. Privacy notices need to do this. They need to say what you do. And then this is the most important part. You actually have to do what you say. Many times I have seen, oh, we don't share or sell information, and then there's a joint webinar and that happens. Or we don't collect precise geolocation and then someone decides that they want to. Or we don't sell data, but actually we do under the California law. Or we're using session replay cookies and they aren't disclosed. Teams have to talk together. This is part of where data privacy is everyone's responsibility. We need to make sure that everyone is being clear on what is actually happening, communicate what's actually happening, and make sure that what our notice says to our end user matches what we're doing on the site. Now, if any of you are lucky enough to have to write a privacy notice, you're going to want to pay attention here, but most of you probably might just have to answer these questions for someone in your organization, which is data collected, data used, data shared, the cookies and trackers, everything that we've talked about today, that has to be in the privacy notice. How can people opt out? What are the requirements? And there's a whole long list of other paragraphs that you might also have to have. You are not going to memorize this chart, but I want you to see how complex individual rights can be. Do you see how all the diamonds, none of them all line up perfectly? Some of them do, and some of them don't. And we're on our way to a really long, messy compilation of privacy laws where we'll have the same situation. What you have to think about is, what will you do for people like Jodi in Atlanta, Georgia, who has no privacy rights? Will you show me the cookie banner? Or will you geolocate it only to the regions that are required? If I ask you to delete my data, will you include me or leave me out? What will you do for those that are required and those that are not? You need a process. You need to be able to have internal procedures to accept and respond to all these different requests. It is on you, the organization, to keep track of that. It is you, the organization, who has to provide clear notice in that privacy notice of how I do that. Where do I go? What do I do? Some places have an appeal process you might have to worry about, and training people. And of course, doing our cookie audits, super important. So going forward, hopefully you understand this is about trust. If you want people to hit the accept button on our cookies, we have to explain to them why it's in their benefit to do so. What are we doing with the information? Why do we need that? Why is it okay to trust your site? What is it about your organization that they can connect with and build a relationship with? Because the reason they hit no and reject and opt out, and if you ever get an individual rights request, is because the person's really mad at you by then. Well, maybe not you as an individual, but you as an organization. Instead, we want to connect. We want them to realize, oh no, this is going to be in their benefit. This is why it's okay to share data, and it's all about trust. Tips for success for you all. Someone in your organization needs to own privacy. If no one does, volunteer someone, volunteer someone, hire someone on the outside, but someone has to own privacy for you. Privacy is not a set and forget activity. It is something that is ongoing all the time. The laws are changing. The site is changing. What's happening in the business is changing. It's dynamic. And we have to maintain and keep up with what's actually happening all the time. Not to mention privacy laws just keep coming, and especially here in the United States, continue to make it complicated. Remember the basics. So collect what you need. Only collect what you absolutely have to have. That's actually a basic in privacy laws. Collect what you need for a business purpose. Tell me why you're collecting it. Give me choices. Protect data. We didn't talk too much about security. That's an entire other conversation, but definitely protect data and understand the vendor. So if you have a third-party pixel, who is that company and what are they doing with the data? Remember, it goes back to trust. If you allow a tracker on your site, that means that I, the individual, am hoping that you did your homework on who that vendor is, and I should trust you. So make sure you understand where that data is going and what they're doing with it. If you're ever not sure, just ask. Ask someone for help. Ask someone, what does this mean? Is it okay to do this? Does it have to be opt-in? Do I need a privacy notice? If you're just ever unsure, ask someone. When you're going through any of the pixels, any activity, any analytics, any gathering of data, put the customer first. What will they think? Will they expect this? Would they not like this? Put the customer in that first mind, and you will then lead from a privacy and a trust building point of view. And one of my favorites is, don't just go and copy what you see out on the internet and you think they are doing a good job, especially if you are not a privacy expert, because what you need to have for you is not necessarily what the other company is doing. You want it to be direct to you. So I would love to open it up for any questions. And then I'm also going to offer on our site, we have a free checklist. Would love for you to grab that. It's going to cover all the things that we need for US state laws. However, you might be listening and you're like, well, what about GDPR and UK? I care about that too. We have tons of content, tons of articles, some comparison pieces, sketchbooks, lots and lots of content that you can grab. This is just kind of hot off the press to comply with the US pieces. And then another piece of content in addition to the podcast that releases on Thursday. We also have a book. You can grab it on Kindle for $1. If you really like reading hardcover, you can order that too. It's very much meant for the business professional. It is not a super crazy tech heavy kind of book. People tell us they actually enjoy reading it and find it fun to read. So with all that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can address any questions that you all might have. And also thank you so much for listening to everything you ever wanted to know about privacy today.
Okay, thank you so much for that talk, Jodi. I learned a few interesting tips and tricks from that. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that Hotjar session recording issue. That's a new one, as in an opt-in. I'm just gonna if attendees have got questions, if you could use the Q&A feature, and I think 2 people have actually just used.
And Phil, I was going to add a little bit something to the Hotjar piece. So the state of Florida is one of the ones that has a lot of litigation that is happening. What's happening is they're using old wiretapping laws.
Wow.
And going after session replay, saying that they're violating wiretapping laws. This is a bit prevalent in Florida. Many companies will have a geo-targeted banner in Florida where the person will opt in, or they're blocking it from Florida and going in the reverse direction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of when we've been doing setups of like OneTrust and CookieBot, we're sometimes using these GeoIP location rules for that. I guess the only tricky bit from my side is there's the GeoIP from the cookie banner, but it's not like in Google Tag Manager, it's not in there as a native thing. So it's kind of almost a need to sort of use like the city and country as logic as fields. I'm just seeing if anyone has asked a question in chat. Jodi, we have a breakout room, so maybe people might be a bit shy because it's privacy related. So they might want to maybe talk to you one-to-one, or not sort of raise their hands of being on a call. So I've put the link to the breakout room, so you can people can continue discussions and ask you questions there directly. I've also just put a link in into chat for the feedback form. I just sent the wrong way around. We'll add, so people can submit that, and if they've got questions in that feedback form, we can also send those through to you.
Sure. I do see one that just came through. Happy to address now, if that's okay, Phil.
Yeah, go for it.
So someone asked, can we say or assume that from the first time you ask for email and password to log in an app, do we have to put a consent banner? You would only need a consent banner if you are literally, if you have some type of analytics on that very first page. If it's a page that only has a username and a password, then you would want a link to the privacy notice on that page. Anytime you collect a personal data field, a name, an email, a username, a password, a phone number, or you have some type of pixel, you want the privacy notice on the page. So I'm hoping that answered it. If you had any kind of analytics pixel on the login page, and if that was your first experience, then you would actually have to have a consent banner. However, if that's not the first page that someone's going to, then you wouldn't have to have it there. Let's say I went to a home page, I pressed the login button, it could be on the home page.
Yeah, that's good advice. There's Fred Pike has asked, what do you think of Google consent mode and cookieless pings?
Well, so cookieless is a whole nother, I feel like, universe and conversation. It might change the need for all these different cookie banners all over the place. It doesn't really change the fundamental piece, though. There's still data being collected. It's just being collected slightly differently. Everything around a privacy notice is still going to be here. Any of the connecting points of how you're going to associate Jodi with something over here. So any of the IDs that you're able to connect Jodi with the activity would still count. We're just shifting from third-party cookies, to a different situation. I do think in time, we're not going to be having this cookie conversation with third-party cookies. We're going to be using it in something else. And what people are doing is then they're using email as the identifier. Well, that's even more personal than the cookie situation. And so then we're going to end up down the, you can't use email anymore. We're just going to someone's going to keep trying to find new identifiers, and we're going to have the same principles will apply. And the principles are notice and disclosure, choice, and sometimes you always have to have a business purpose, and potentially in the EU and UK, a legal basis. The consent is often the legal basis. We didn't even talk about the e-privacy directive, which is still in full swing, which is what often is driving the consent banner, and then in conjunction with GDPR. So kind of a long answer, Fred. You have to still have a legal basis to be able to use that. It might be consent, it might not be, and it's all tied to which identifiers and what you'd actually be doing with the information.
I guess that's the one suggestion or a thing. So Jodi, a long time ago, I did a talk about it was called Black Hat Analytics, and it was an education piece about all the things that you shouldn't do. And in most cases, it's because people don't realize they've accidentally added something or whatnot. And then on the flip side, I did also, here's the things that you should do. Do you think that on the privacy audits that you mentioned, do you think it's kind of like a both, be as green as you can, and also try and move all the red stuff to at least neutral or green?
That's a really good point. I think the first part of an audit should be that you're really making sure the basics are in place. Which laws are you in scope for? What are those requirements? What are you doing? And then there's all kinds of other things to be reviewing. Are you sending personal information in any of these things? We don't want any of the personal information actually in any of the tags going back to Google, which we sometimes see in Google Analytics, right? People have grabbed personal information. Well, we don't want that either. And then if there's other kind of just best practices and what is the end goal of what you're trying to do, I certainly think that should be included. When we're doing these audits, what we're seeing is most companies right now tend to be focused on, I have a law, I have a compliant solution. Is it actually functioning and working? Because anyone from the outside can see the cookie and privacy settings and notice. That's what people can see from the outside. They might also test your individual rights process because that's from the outside. And then, I'm going to send it to you. So as a result, they tend to be more regulatory focused. At the same time, it's a great opportunity to make them not just that. What else is it that would be ideal to maximize all the settings and all the use cases? So I think what you've shared is a great point.
Yeah. I've also just put a link to your LinkedIn profile into chat, so if people also want to connect with you and ask you questions via that, they can do. I'm just going to share my screen and just the washing machine going off in the background. Sorry, 1 second while I turn the washing machine off. Hold on. I think we're also we've got a beta product in the works for a consent mode monitor to try and do a real live scoring and live monitoring. It's not quite ready yet, but watch this space. So I'm just going to share the link for if people want to continue the discussion with you, Jodi. It's just bit.ly room 1 GTM forward, which I'm just going to put into chat. There we go. So we've now got I'm just checking on timings. Thank you so much for your talk, Jodi. That was really helpful, and I think I'm going to need to sort of rewatch it, just to make sure all of my clients are sort of covered all the stuff that you mentioned on that list.
Absolutely. Well,
mhm.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining.